Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining me. If anyone saw the original thumbnail for this episode and saw that the guest for today was supposed to be Dr. Jay Bundy, that is correct, but Dr. Bundy had to back out at the last minute. And as a result, I had to find a new guest. I had wanted AJ to be on the show anyway. So I reached out to AJ and I said, "Hey, are you available tomorrow?" And AJ said, "Yeah, I'm free tomorrow." So I really appreciate AJ for filling in last minute for Dr. Bundy.
Absolutely. I'm super excited because I had wanted to be on your show for a while, but I was like, maybe I shouldn't ask. I'll wait to be invited. So
I totally get that, but I also do not mind people asking. So if there's anyone out there that is wanting to be a guest, send me an email, and if I can, I'll get you on the show. I'll ask you a little bit about what you want to talk about first. AJ, I would like to. There's a couple of things I'd like to talk to you about, but first, let's hear a little bit about your story. Who are you? What do you do?
so I'm AJ. I started my channel probably a year ago or so. Yeah, August was a year. And no, I'm sorry, March was a year. My
Okay.
timeline's a little bit off. So a little bit over a year. And I was really interested in the whole atheist community conversations that were happening. And one of the things that I didn't see a whole lot of was connection between how brain science debunks a lot of religious beliefs or religious dogma. And so I made that the main focus of my channel. So I do a lot of content about how different things affect the brain, like even things like music, right? How that affects the brain, how love affects your brain,
How
all
what
that kind of
affects the brain?
love.
Oh, love. Okay.
Love.
I thought you said law, and that didn't make
Oh,
sense.
oh no, no, love. Yeah, so that's my focus, and it's a topic that I really enjoy talking about because it has a kind of close to my heart. The reason I learned about it. Um, so yeah, that's mostly what I do, and just go on other people's channels and have fun or sometimes not so fun conversations. Like whatever comes my way, I'm always up for it.
Okay, I have to ask you this because your shirt says brains are awesome. Are you a
Oh,
zombie? Do you
I'm
eat
not, but
brains?
but it says I wish everybody had one.
Ah, okay.
We do. It's just that some people don't know exactly how to use them.
But do you eat brains?
Um, no.
No.
Despite my appearance, that might be a little intimidating. I don't need brains.
Okay. Okay, very good. Just wanted to clear that up. Um, what is your educational background?
I don't have one in this aspect, so I
Okay.
will make that warning right now that anything you hear from here on in the show is not medical advice. It's not my professional opinion. I kind of like the way a lot of atheists have an interest. That was mine. So I kind of like try to consume all the information that there is about it, like reading books and looking up people who we think can be trusted in that, like scientific consensus and reading science papers and stuff like that. That's something I grew up, my mom was an atheist too, like, oh,
Mm,
non-believer
mhm,
growing up.
mhm.
She didn't use that label. But so we had tons of books, and religious included. It was more like mythology sort of thing. But her main interest was animals and human biology, so I had a lot of like exposure to that type of learning early on, and I think it helped me quite a bit not get so deeply indoctrinated, even though it did quite a bit. It helped me smoothly transition out of it as well. And
Okay. So your mom was secular.
yeah,
How did you end up religious? Was your dad religious?
my dad was. apparently I was baptized Catholic as a baby, which I didn't find out until like 2 years ago, having a conversation with my mom. Um, but she was also a Catholic growing up, so she was indoctrinated. She came out of religion later in her life, and by the time that I was born, she had already lost her faith, and so she was a lot more secular. But no, the reason I got into religion wasn't my parents. It was
Mhm,
I was in my early 20s and
mhm,
I got pregnant with my first baby, my first and only baby.
mhm,
And my husband's family was religious. They were Christian. They are Christian. And so during my pregnancy, I found out that the baby had a diagnosis of a heart condition, a heart defect. And there was also potential of a diagnosis of a condition that is not compatible with life. And that was devastating to find out that. So his family, with a lot of kindness and concern, this wasn't something that was done maliciously or anything. This was their belief, and so they introduced me to their church, which is the Assembly of God, which is
mm,
Pentecostal evangelical type
mhm,
church.
mhm,
And one of their core things is divine healing. And
mhm,
this
mhm.
attracted me right away because even though I understood science, like I guess you could say on a high school level, um, it was like right away for me. It was really easy to get into it. My husband loved to watch ghost stories shows. So
Uh-huh.
for me, like that was like an introduction to like, hey, if ghosts are real, then that means that souls are real. And so it was easy for me to believe in a God that had created these souls and stuff. And then that somehow you needed to heal your soul in order to heal your physical body. And so with this pregnancy and my own health issues, which is a long list, I was really hopeful that this was gonna heal me. There were
Mhm.
situations where they will, bring me on stage and put their hand over your head and like shake you around, and you will
So they push you
feel
over backwards?
it. Yeah, like yeah, exactly. And like you will feel it in your body, and it was like you knew that you had the spirit in you, and that somehow this spirit was gonna heal you and your baby. Um, when the baby was born, that was to me another confirmation because the baby was born without the second condition that we thought was
Mm.
incompatible with life. The baby
Mhm.
did have the first one, the heart defect was still there. But to me, it was like proof and evidence that God healed my baby because, you know,
'Cause he
maybe
did
that's
half of the
right.
job.
Right. Because,
He did
yeah,
a little bit. Yeah, he did enough that the baby could survive.
yeah. So the first heart surgery happened very soon after the birth, which was a horrifying situation where the baby, where my kid stopped breathing at home, and we had to be rushed to the hospital, and praying over the baby and stuff like that. That was during the first surgery, but it
Mhm.
was really really hard. It was really traumatic for me. Like yeah, the baby was under a lot of pain medication and care that made sure the baby was comfortable. But it was still really hard seeing your baby just had been, chest open and reclosed, and seeing all the medical equipment in the room when they took off the ventilator. Horrible experience for me.
Was she on
Then
ECMO?
on what? Oh,
ECMO.
ECMO is
Yeah.
yeah. I don't know the pronunciation, but yes,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
always don't know how to say it.
Well, that's okay. A lot of people, don't know about it.
But
You
yes,
mentioned being touched by the story that I told in the video I released yesterday about Reese, who died
yeah,
from complications of a heart surgery, and I had never heard of ECMO until I heard of her surgery. But for anyone in the audience who doesn't know what that is, it's a heart and lung machine that it breathes for you and acts as your heart while doctors work on whatever, and it does all that work for you.
It's a huge machine, and it basically pulls all of your blood out and circulates it through that, and then puts it back into your body through
Right.
another tube. So yeah, the baby was on that for a short period during the surgery, and then for a very short time after the surgery, like 48 hours or something. And then all that was removed, and then the ventilator, and all of that stuff. But so that time, I was religious. I was just looking at a photo earlier of a little angel that somebody gave my baby when they were in the first surgery, and then like 2 years later, my toddler by that time was kissing it, and I was like, oh, I made a post that saying how cute that was, and then they were listening to the little prayer on it. So
Mm-hmm.
I came really close to indoctrinating my kid,
Mm-hmm.
really
Mm-hmm.
close. I'm glad it didn't happen that way. But so later on, a couple of years go by. In 2020, my baby was born in 2011. So by the time they were 8 in 2020, it was time for another surgery. We tried the first option, which was not open heart, but it didn't work. It was a valve replacement, so they had to do another open heart surgery. And at this time, the kid wasn't a baby anymore,
Mm-hmm.
and they were a lot more aware of everything that was going on and how painful recovery was. It was really brutal, like sitting next to their bed, just holding their hand, and they had chest tubes of draining, like below the heart,
And you
and
said she
that
was about
that
8
like
at that time?
yeah, 8 years old,
8
yeah.
years old. Okay.
So these tubes, any movement, even speaking, breathing, anything was extremely painful, kind of like ripping part of your flesh or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
um it was horrible. And so sitting there, I kept getting messages of friends and people, you're praying for you, sending you prayers and healing. And I was like, wait, what do you mean healing? Like, why couldn't God prevent this in the first place? Why did
Mm-hmm.
God have to put my kid through all of this?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like, why are you praying for the healing after the surgery? Pray for the healing before the surgery.
Pray for the horse to come
uh,
back after he runs away from the barn instead of locking the barn. Yeah.
exactly, yeah. So yeah, that was the point where I started making the connections, and kind of being like, hey, this isn't a good thing for me to believe in. I like these miracles and this healing, like this is not happening. So yeah, after that I slowly deconverted the beliefs, and with the big help of the atheist community online on YouTube, really, really helpful and helping me deconvert sort of safely and not in a super angry way.
Mm-hmm.
No,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And then,
Um,
yeah,
so does your daughter have an artificial valve now?
yeah. It's
Okay.
called a melody valve.
Okay.
So it's really, it was a pretty good outcome, because what happened was the first time they tried to put the space for the valve inside their heart was too big for that valve. So they had to kind of go in and place a different one that was not able to be put in through the catheter. And they were able to place one that is an adult size, even though they were 8 years old.
Mm.
So what that means is that in the future they will be able to put other valves inside it, several. I think they say about 3 or so, and they are generally replaced every 10 years, depending on the condition. We are at
Mm-hmm.
5 years right now, and they're like letting us know at this past visit a couple of months ago that the condition is severe at this point, with very close to like going into heart failure again. And at that point, they will replace again. So anytime between now, I would say 2 or 3 years. The next 2 or 3 years will be where the next surgery will be, but it's not going to be open heart surgery. It's going to
Oh.
be just a catheter, which is through the leg. They kind of go
Mhm,
in and
mhm.
they place the valve inside, so they'll be able to do that about 3 times, which is
Okay.
great news. So it could be potentially 30 years of
Mhm,
those
mhm.
procedures done like that, and who
Okay.
knows what kind of um, technology or science advancements we will have by the time that they need the next full replacement.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that is good news. That is good news. All right, so then you were starting to question, the whole religious thing because the prayer stuff wasn't working. And the prayer stuff was kind of why you came to the religion in the first place. So is that about when you started to stop believing?
I would say so. Yeah, yeah. It was pretty early, but there was quite a bit of time before I said it out loud.
Mhm,
I would
mhm,
say maybe like 2 years or so, because lots of family, and my husband was religious too, and I kind of didn't know what his reaction will be, so I was kind of like keeping it to myself at first. But then we talked about it, and I understood that his faith was very different to his family's, which we had actually never talked about,
mm,
interestingly. and
mhm.
we and I understood that his belief is more like supernatural, like his spiritual, but it's not like the biblical. Like he doesn't follow biblical scripture. He never even read the Bible. So
He's kind of a spiritual nun.
yeah, yeah,
Okay, so
and
he has no religion in particular,
that
but he
was like
believes there's some kind of spirit world.
yeah, that was when we first started talking about it. I would say right
Mhm.
now he does call himself an atheist. So
Oh, he
yeah,
does?
yeah,
Okay, okay.
yeah,
Now, one thing I neglected to do, was to mention you mentioned that you have a channel, and your channel is called Ways to Human.
that's right.
Um, I, put a link to your channel both in the description, and it is pinned in the comments. So if anyone in the chat is not already subscribed to Ways to Human, please pop over there and subscribe and then pop back.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And by the way, I just noticed the heart, the anatomical heart behind me. I
Mhm,
painted that because of my kid's heart stuff, and then the
mhm.
music is because we both it's some like a passion that we share. So that's me painting
Okay. Very good, very good. Yeah, I imagine that's something that, is something you keep a close eye on all the time.
yeah.
Now you became very interested in how brains work, and one thing you told me in the comments that was very interesting to me in the at the premiere of my video yesterday was I mentioned that having met you, when I was reading your comments, I was hearing it in your own voice because I now know your voice. And tell the audience what you told me about that.
So while learning all this brain stuff, um, I heard a question, and somebody was asking, "How do you think?" And at first, we might think, "Oh, I think this and that," but not like what do you think. It's like, how do you think? How is your thinking inside your head? And mine has changed over time, and I think the reason for this is because the way our brain makes connections based on what our senses are like, which senses are heightened and which senses are not. My sister can't smell, so she can't
Mm,
make you know memories of that,
mhm,
or like that's not a trigger for her. For me, hand sanitizer is a trigger for thoughts, or like memories of surgeries and stuff. But anyway,
mhm,
so I was born with very low hearing, pretty much.
mhm,
I was completely deaf, and I also had vision issues, like eyesight issues, growing up. And while my vision was low, it wasn't super low. However, mm, maybe like 7 years ago or so, it started getting lower and lower to the point where I went legally blind. And it was close to the time where I got my cochlear implant. And before that, my thinking was extremely visual. I could like create and imagine and remember uh, memories or situations or scenarios. Like if I was about to go meet somebody I hadn't seen in a while, I was just like replaying memories of seeing them before and creating new situations. Hey, what do I do if this happens or if that happens, and so on and so forth. So it was all visual mostly. But when my vision went so low that I was legally blind because I couldn't even see some of the features of somebody standing in front of me like a foot away.
Mm-hmm.
That started affecting the way I thought. And because I had now a much better way of hearing people's voices and understanding what they were saying, my thinking became really verbal. It was mostly a voice, my own as well as other people's voices. And that's how I mostly think now. Although after I had a corneal transplant, I regained my vision, and now even things like my dreaming have become more bright and colorful, which my dreams had actually also gone super low in color. I could never see people's faces. It was like I could tell who they were based on like things they were saying or how they were dressed and stuff like that. But it was like I couldn't see people's faces, and it was all toned, almost black and white. So it's like super interesting how our brain rewires and completely changes itself based on how our senses are working.
Okay, very good. Now, while you were having the vision problems, was the church praying for your vision, or was this after you had already left the church?
Oh, it was after. It was after.
It
Yeah,
was after.
long time after. So yeah.
Okay. So you never had prayer for yourself for healing.
I did when I was still pregnant. Even they
Mm-hmm.
were like, it was more so that they were gonna heal the entire uh thing, me and the baby.
Okay. Did they
But
ever
yeah, my stuff never changed. So
did they ever pray for your hearing?
actually, no, I don't think
Ah,
so. Not specifically that I remember. And I think it was probably because I had a lot of other more serious stuff like pain and diabetes and stuff like that. So maybe they were saying the wrong prayers.
they didn't use the right magic words.
Right? Yeah.
Just
Specify. I guess God maybe doesn't know.
that's right. That's right. Just like when that Catholic priest said, "We baptize you" instead of "I baptize you," and he messed up the spell, and all the people he baptized didn't count.
Oh my goodness.
Oh,
Okay.
you
Yeah.
didn't hear that story?
No, I don't. No, I don't think I caught that part.
That
No.
was about 3 years ago in Arizona. It was a priest, they discovered that he'd been doing this for decades, and the church declared that all of his baptisms were null and void. And so everyone he baptized had to get rebaptized. Everyone that he married was now their marriage was now annulled because they were not married to a Catholic anymore. And it created a huge stir, and the Catholic
Chaos.
Church had to relent and say, okay, if you were baptized by this guy and later married, you're still you need to be rebaptized, but your marriage is still good.
Well, you gotta just redo it, I guess.
Yep.
Repeat.
Yep.
Wow, that's quite a story. Yeah.
Ryan is right. Try abracadabra.
Magical. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. All the magic of religion. Okay, so now your channel focuses on how our brains work in in debunking religious ideas. So how does that work?
So, firstly, let me say the reason I got into that topic specifically, I did have a lot of interest in that. Like growing up, I kind of wanted to be a neurologist or a neurosurgeon or something. So brains
Mhm.
were always fascinating to me already. But I mentioned, my kids, and I talked to their cardiologist about this, and he confirmed that is an actual thing. And I was like, hey, there's some studies that show kids who have had open heart surgeries, and I think it's because of the ECMO early on in their lives, are much more likely to have behavioral conditions such as ADHD, OCD, autistic, etc. And my kid had all three of them. So, like, I asked the doctor, could this have anything to do with their original surgery? And the doctor was like, yeah, it's like documented in science that it is a thing. And so it was after the surgery, maybe about a year later, my kids started having pretty severe symptoms of what we later found out was OCD. But this behavior was completely unlike the kid that we had raised for those 8 or 9 years. So it was really surprising for us to see the complete switch to literally a different person.
Mm.
And even things like hallucinations, right?
Mm-hmm.
They were seeing things that were not there. So I wanted to understand what was happening, because again, it shocked me, like the way it could be this one person and then this completely different person uh, was really odd. And that's how I learned all about how the brain works. So how the brain works, firstly, is we have neurons, which is like, let's say they're kind of like this in our
Mm-hmm.
brain, and we have billions of those. Our experiences throughout life, especially very early in life, before we can even make memories,
Mm-hmm.
around age 5. Like, most people don't remember before age 5 because the memories are not set permanently at that time. So, but
I
even
can
before
remember
that,
being 2.
oh yeah, some people do have some faint memories of it.
Mm-hmm.
It depends on when your own individual brain starts making those connections, you know.
Ah, okay. Okay.
So, but for the majority of people, it's the average. Let's say
Mm-hmm.
5 is average. So it can be before, it can be after. Some kids don't remember anything before 7, for example, and some remember stuff at 2 or 3. I do have some of those too, like drinking a bottle and stuff like that. um, but so neurons have two sides, right? One
Mm-hmm.
of the sides is the presynaptic, and the other is the postsynaptic. So the synapses are like the connections that they make with each other, and the way they communicate with each other is with neurotransmitters. And there's a lot of different neurotransmitters. Like, the most common you might know is like serotonin, which is kind
Mm-hmm.
of like brings changes your mood, whether it's be good or bad. Dopamine, the pleasure and reward system. That's what people who take drugs, it's basically increasing their dopamine and making them feel a lot of pleasure. Adrenaline, which is the fight or flight neurotransmitter. Noradrenaline, which makes you focus when you're in a dangerous situation. Like, adrenaline and noradrenaline kind of work together when you're find yourself in danger. And there's a couple more, right? And GABA, which is kind of calms you down.
What does
So
I'm sorry, what did you say?
yeah. Oh, GABA is another
GABA.
one of the
Okay.
neurotransmitters which
Okay.
calms you down
Okay.
when
I wasn't
you're,
I wasn't familiar with that one.
yeah. There's a few more, but like people probably have never heard of them anyway.
I always wanted
Uh,
a shirt that said, I'm addicted to endorphins.
oh, endorphins, that's another one. Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. Right? Like, when you go to the gym, you release lots
Right.
of endorphins and it
Mhm.
makes you feel good.
Mhm.
So one side of the neuron releases those neurotransmitters based on whatever situation you're faced with at the moment. Um, Oxytocin, the one that we think about comes when babies are being born, is actually the connection neurotransmitter. It helps you bond with people. When people hug each other, they release that. It's not just for like birth. But yeah, also when the babies are born, it's released in like very high amounts to help the mom bond with the baby. But going back, so the One side releases the neurotransmitters, the other one receives it, and once it receives it, that's when you feel the feelings, the emotions, the sensations in your body to whatever situation you're in. If you're in danger, you're gonna feel like
Mm-hmm.
shaking, and if you're hugging someone, like I said, you're gonna feel like super warm feeling of the oxytocin. When you have depression, you have a low level of serotonin. So, what do we do with medications? For example, there's a serotonin reuptake inhibitor. It's a medication that when this side releases and this side receives, it doesn't go inside the neuron. It just acts upon the receptors outside of it. And the chemicals, the serotonin, for example, goes back into the one that released it.
Mm.
So what these medications do is they prevent the reuptake. It prevents them from going back inside. So the
Oh,
serotonin stays in the middle.
okay.
That's
Okay.
why, yeah, that's why depression medication works. It's like allows all the serotonin to stick around and have the effect on the receiving neuron. And once it wears off, then you're back to your low level of serotonin.
Okay.
Um,
Now I have a question.
yeah.
So when the serotonin is released, and if there's no drugs in the system, the other side just absorbs the serotonin?
No, it always goes back to the original side that released it.
Okay, so it just touches the receptor and then goes back.
Correct, correct.
Okay,
So,
got you.
so the going back part is what is affected by medication. Like it doesn't allow it to go back in.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Okay.
So it just stays in the middle, in between the two, and kind of like touching the receptors that
Mhm,
receive it,
mhm.
touching, trying to go back, but being unable to. So it just goes back into the one, and it keeps you happy for as long as the medication is active. That's why you have to continue taking it, because otherwise it will go back to, yeah. So all that to say that that's how our brains work. Now, there's
Mhm,
different parts of the brain that do different things. Different behaviors are controlled by different parts of the brain. One example would be when somebody is having sex. You know, you're releasing oxytocin, and so certain part of your brains are more active. However, the prefrontal cortex, which is at the front of your brain, is the part that helps you make good, rational decisions. And
mhm.
that part of the brain becomes much more inactive when we are engaged in sex. And that's why people make bad decisions when they're having sex. Like not wearing protection and such, kind of
Well,
like being in, that's
actually,
what they call the heat of the moment, is because only some part of your brain is working. The other one is like clouded.
you've kind of clued me into a part of the reason why sex is difficult for me.
Oh,
And, it is very difficult to arouse me, and it is very easy to lose it, once I get started.
I feel you
And I
sometimes.
have told my husband repeatedly that part of the problem is my brain isn't engaged.
Hmm.
And
Yep.
if my brain isn't engaged and I start thinking about something else, I lose all interest in sex.
That's super interesting because I always felt like I've always felt that way, and I'm kind of like don't want to say it because it's like you don't want to make your husband feel like he's not doing his job because he is. Believe me, it's just my brain never stops, and
Mhm,
so sometimes when I'm doing things that I need to focus on, even if it's work, is the rest of it is always still running.
mhm, mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, that's very interesting.
And so, for example, in what I learned about my kids' OCD, right, and the behavior that was happening during the time that they were not medicated, was that the levels of these neurotransmitters, like the majority of people, have a very good balance of it, and it works properly, like it should. But there are some people who naturally or externally uh, have that level affected. Mental health issues can be one of those situations where the levels are extremely off. ADHD, you have sometimes you have a really low level of dopamine. That's why people seek behavior that increases the dopamine, uh,
Mm.
like
Mhm.
repetitive behavior. Yeah.
Mhm.
Then there are so many external factors that can mess with our brains. Imagine a woman, a single mother, right? And she has a toddler, and then she got pregnant from a random person that's not in the picture. And so she has this baby, and the baby has a serious health condition, and is in the ICU at the hospital. And she still has her toddler at home. So she has to balance work, having the baby at home, having the baby in the hospital. She's not eating well. She's not staying hydrated. She's not sleeping because she's back and forth. She's struggling with her job, struggling with keeping a roof over the baby's heads or knowing where the next meal is going to come from. All of those things, even if the person doesn't have any health conditions, any mental health conditions, can affect the amount of the neurotransmitters that are going around. She's mostly going to have adrenaline and noradrenaline, which regulate when you're in danger because she's so stressed out. So imagine that in the middle of the night, she's at home and she gets a call that her baby's having lots of trouble, and she's afraid that the baby will that something bad will happen. So she drives there in the middle of the night, and her brain is not engaged in the driving; it's engaged in everything else. So she hits somebody, and this person dies. You can I'm sure the law will more than likely give her punishment for taking a life, and we can understand that perfectly, right? We're not advocating for no punishment, but we can ask, like, her family can rally around her and understand that she's not a murderer. She's someone who was in a situation where her brain was not fully engaged and mistakes happen. So I think for me that was like a really good way that I understood how the brain works in relation to religion, for example, right? Like the way that people have religious experiences, that they think that they see God or that something's a miracle, believing in demons, right? Those are very well explained by parts of how our brain is working during those times.
And what is it? Do those thoughts give a religious person pleasure? Is that what it is?
A lot of times, yes, there was actually a study. There's a
Mhm.
whole field of science called neuro, like brain,
Mhm.
theology, like for
Mm.
belief. So
I
they
wasn't
kind of,
aware of that.
yeah. So they I did a video about this because I found it fascinating, and so what they do is they kind of try to mimic people's experiences with religion, right? Like supernatural experiences where somebody feels the Holy Spirit, or when somebody sees demons, or when somebody sees visions of whatever, talk to God or Jesus and such. And so they use different stimulus, like the person being deprived of food, water, sleep, just like I mentioned in the case of the woman, how their brain scans look like when they were praying, when they were listening to music, when they were meditating, even in a secular way. And they pretty much all lit up the exact same reward pathways of the brain with mostly dopamine. So yeah, it's just your brain releasing chemicals, basically.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
There's one study that I always found fascinating that I read about that showed that when a person is listening to their own thoughts and when they're listening to God, that the same part of the brain is being used for both. Had you read anything about that?
I had not, but it does make sense. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it does seem. Uh,
But if they're listening to another person, that's a different part of the brain.
wow. Okay, I'm gonna have to look into that. That's super interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like God is almost themselves.
Right, right.
you know?
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. And that's, one of the biggest things that I ask people about is, okay, do you ever talk to God? And if they say yes, I say, okay, do you ever hear an audible voice? And most people will say no. And I say, okay, how do you know the difference between the voice of God and your own thoughts? And they usually have some kind of an answer. Oh, well, when it's the voice of God, it's more powerful, or the voice of God makes me feel a particular way, or whatever. They have a way that they think that they can tell the difference, but when it comes right down to it, you really don't, because that voice of God never seems to tell you anything that you don't already know.
Right? Yeah, it like pulls from your already known thoughts.
Mhm.
So it's
Mhm.
no new information usually. And we're exposed to so much information that sometimes we don't even realize we're listening to somebody say stuff, and then it comes up later and we don't even know where we got that from.
Mhm.
Um, but that's another thing. See, focus. Uh, in any given at any given time, even like right now, our senses are perceiving so much stuff. Like it's hot in my room, like this part of the room, and with the lights. So I'm perceiving that. I'm taking in the touch part of it, and there's stuff touching my legs under the desk. There's your voice coming through. It's actually streaming into my brain, not my ear.
Mhm.
There's a fan, there's the AC outside, there's the live chat on this side right here, the bright lights in front of me, all of that input. So our brain has to make a choice because you can't focus on all of it. If you were to,
Right.
it doesn't have the capacity to do that. And
Mhm.
so right now it's trying to focus on your voice. And so a lot of time I realized that I wasn't even paying attention to the chat. And every now and then I see it move something off the side of my eyes. And I'm like, oh, the chat was there because my brain forgot about it. So that's another super cool fact about the brain.
Mhm. Mhm. Yep, that is. Now, when you use this information to debunk religious ideas, how do you do that?
Oh, lots of way. I try to mostly, I think that you don't necessarily have to tell people I'm doing this to help you understand that your religion, doesn't make sense or whatever. Like, I think that's negative. The way I like to do it is, like I said, I make videos about many different ways that different things outside of us affect the way we respond. Things like childhood trauma, um, things like how music, drugs, um, what else? Well, like I said, religion, how the thoughts of God, how um, how the teenage brain works, all those kind of things. And I think that a basic understanding of science is what helps the most for
Mm.
people to ultimately make the connection. Be like,
Mhm.
oh,
Mhm.
okay. One great example, a conversation that I have with a DS family member that was with us at NaNoCon. I'm not sure if you met him, uh, but he's kind of deconstructed his not fully his religion, just like he's not part of organized religion anymore.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, but about a year ago, we had this conversation on my channel. I try to do like an epistemology type of video, and he was sharing his experience. And later, we did a video all about dreams, and he was sharing how, as a child, he had lots of experiences with what he understood to be demons coming into his dreams.
Mhm.
And I think, I hope that our conversations that we've had helped him realize that that was not the case, and that the way our brains work is just like when we dream, we just pull from memories, most like pretty much just memories. Like we don't really dream of things that we've never seen before. Even if it's like a random creature, it's usually like a mix of several things that we might have seen before.
Mm. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So it's not like you're suddenly gonna learn anything from your dreams. They're just memories.
Okay. Okay.
So that
And
was a religious, sort of belief that could be helped by having a conversation about how the brain dreams.
mhm. Mhm. Okay. Um, what do you do for a living?
I don't work.
Okay.
I just do like content online mostly. I would like that to be my source of income. But at
Mhm.
this time, my husband's the one that works, and
Okay.
we homeschool. But don't be scared. It's like a very secular homeschooling, and we did it mostly because of my kids' mental health struggles and all that stuff. So it was a
Right.
better path for us. Yeah. So
You
that's
you
what I
did
do.
not you did not buy your homeschool materials from Ken Ham.
Oh no, no, thank you. No thanks. Like this microscope behind me gets a lot of use, and so does the map, and like we're very science forward
Mhm.
learning style.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah,
Now, on your channel, what kind of things do you like to talk about?
I really enjoy the live shows. They're like the most fun, just kind of hanging out with somebody else in the community and learning more about their specific interest that they have. Uh,
Mhm.
because that's like the way that you do, like you choose the topic based on what the person enjoys talking about. That's a really
Mhm.
good way of connecting and figuring out where everybody stands and where they're at. So I really like that, those type of conversations. One of the more interesting ones I had was uh, about consciousness. I really enjoyed that one. Is a
Mm.
friend who is a philosopher. He's writing a
Oh.
book, and
Mhm.
so he really enjoys talking about philosophy. Richard Gilliver, are you familiar with him?
I am
Oh,
not.
okay.
No.
So he's really good. I'm looking forward to reading his book too. So really
Okay.
fun.
And what is his book? Do you know offhand or not?
Yeah, it's mostly like philosophy, and there's a little bit of psychology about yeah, mostly like related to religion as well.
Okay.
So
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, that sounds interesting.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty interesting.
Do you also do scripted videos or do you just do live streams?
No, I do a lot of scripted videos too.
Mhm.
Let's see. The one about how do you think? I really enjoyed doing that one. I'm trying to redo my videos because originally the ones that I first made, the sound quality was really bad. I
Mm.
was cringing at it. um, okay, one of my most viewed videos was where I talk about Adam and Eve. And I
Mm.
say that God punishes Adam and Eve, and people were mad. They were mad. I guess the Christians were really upset about my saying that God had punished them. I have videos about lots of videos about gender and like uh, versus gender versus biological sex, different like
Mhm.
the difference between them.
Mhm.
I have one about the memory consolidation, which is the way your brain creates and stores memories. Let's see, the fine tuning argument. I use a lot of kind of like science to debunk that one, not specifically brain science. It was just more like uh, why that argument doesn't work.
Does that go more into physics or astronomy?
Yes, it's just
Okay.
a little bit. Like I'm not super familiar with that topic, so I didn't go very deep.
Mhm.
Yeah, but it was something I enjoyed doing. What else? Yeah, lots of stuff. Like I have one about how each different emotion comes up uh, in your brain, which neurotransmitters are up and down during different situations, why we get angry, why we cry, which is a funny one because apparently when we are experiencing a very stressful situation, whether it be sad or just anxious, our cortisol levels go up. So scientists think that the reason we cry is to bring down the cortisol levels.
Mm.
because cortisol is burned by activity. If you
Mm-hmm.
run, or if you're like walking around or such, then your cortisol gets lower. I know that because I have cortisol issues and I take steroids to bring up my cortisol. So, anyways, when I cry, my cortisol levels drop so much that I get a very like a migraine, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Not the typical headache, but that's why most people get a headache after crying, is because their cortisol has come down to a level where it's not great. So yeah, it makes it like feel different physical sensations. So yeah, in brain is very very complicated.
Yes, it is. It definitely is. Stephen Myers says the fine tuning argument is debunked in 8 words. If things happen differently, they would be different.
I agree with that.
Uh, I also wanted to highlight that because in a few weeks, Richard Carrier is going to come on to talk specifically about the fine tuning argument.
Oh, I love
And
that.
my friend Bill Cluck is going to be here too. And he is a man who was an atheist, and he recently converted from atheism to deism because of the fine tuning argument, and specifically because of the work of Barnes. I can't remember Barnes' first name at the moment, but anyway. And when I saw Richard Carrier's blog with a refutation of Barnes, I thought, oh, it would be really interesting to get the two of these together to a conversation, and that's what I set up. And that's going to be a very interesting show.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely gonna watch that one. If I can catch it, I'll once you put the thumbnail, I'll click the reminder, notify me, and then that should be. So hopefully,
Mm-hmm.
uh, you know what? I was
What?
just like watching my list of what stuff I had posted, and there's one video that I also want to remake, and it's called "The Brain's Built-in Moral Compass."
Okay.
And we know that that was another sort of debunking of a religious idea, and I posted it to debunk God's morality argument, right? That our morality comes from God, because I hear that a lot. And so Forrest Falkai once mentioned this part of the brain called the insula, and I was very interested in learning more about it and what that meant. And when I dove into it, it appears that it is our own moral compass that is within our brain. And now, this part of the brain tells you when something is disgusting, like even just seeing a piece of food that you usually don't like, then it will activate the insula and it will make you feel those nauseous sensation. Um, let's say myself, I am very sensitive to blood, even though I'm very used to medical stuff, and I think that's probably why. So, oh yes, Ryan got that right. Insula. Ryan was asking if it was spelled that way. Um, so if I get a cut on my finger and there's blood, I get dizzy, and that's the insula does that. It activates and it makes you feel different emotions related to things like disgust and such. And so when dealing with morality, if we see someone kicking a puppy, then that part of the brain is going to activate and be like, that's wrong. Like, I feel emotionally upset by this because
Mm.
your insula is activated. And that's
Mm-hmm.
what helps us guide our own decision making, right? When you combine the insula with the prefrontal cortex, then you're able to combine it and make better decisions about morality and such. Well,
Do you
when
know if
yeah,
animals produce insula?
how to pronounce it?
No, do you know if animals produce insula? Do they have insula? Do they have a
Oh no, it's called insula with an
right,
A at the end, and it's
right,
just a part of the brain.
right. But do animals have that?
Uh, actually, I don't know that.
Okay, that'd be an interesting thing to look into, because I know that
Yeah,
there are a number of animals that have some form of moral system. Um, elephants will punish their young. Uh, Other primates will teach their young. Wolves will exclude a person from the pack if they are not contributing to the pack.
right.
Um, so we see this behavior in other animals, and I was wondering if they have insula also. That'd be worth looking into.
So I quickly looked at in the National Institute of Health says that yes, especially mammals.
Mm-hmm.
This that part specifically talks about mammals and rodents, which is a common animal model used to understand the brain, and they do have that, and it helps with emotional processing, learning, decision making, risk assessment, right? Because if you're um, let's think, I'm trying to think of a good situation. Um, well, but let's say you are witnessing somebody else doing something bad. That's going to trigger all of these emotions that come from the insula. And there were actually some studies that show that psychopaths, true psychopaths, have a really small insula.
Mm.
So it's not an excuse, it's an
Hmm.
explanation. It's an
Right.
explanation for their behavior. They'll still be
Mhm.
held accountable for it. But we can understand why people behave the way they do sometimes, even if you've known them to never be a bad person, right? Why they can make these, yeah, why these behavioral changes can happen based on their external circumstances. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, so anyway, so they were studying um, that the reason for the very small insula in people who are psychopaths can very easily be traced back to their very early childhood. If they were emotionally and physically abandoned or abused, then and not raised in a way that offers and teaches compassion, they don't learn it. And that part of the brain never develops.
Mm.
So yeah, so a normal size insula will give you pretty good morals. A small insula will create people that don't have the capacity to. Their brain just doesn't perceive other people's harm. Like
Mhm. Mhm.
if they see somebody else crying, their own brain simply doesn't register it as a harmful thing.
So they have no empathy.
Right, right. So there are people that actually have no empathy
Okay.
because of childhood trauma is so extremely important in understanding how an adult behaves because you may not think about it, but it shaped their brain. And
Mhm.
so the results of that is how you see someone behaving as an adult.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, well, we are about out of time. I want to remind everyone once again, if you have not already, please subscribe to Ways to Human, and you can hear more from AJ and some of her studies, and she's happy to share her knowledge. We had the question recently, "Are you a doctor?" And the answer is no. AJ is not a doctor, but AJ has done a lot of reading on this and is just sharing her journey through learning about the brain. And there is a link to AJ's channel, both in the description, and it is pinned in the chat. If you can see the chat, it's right there. So make sure that you subscribe to Ways to Human if you have not already. Um, AJ, before we go, is there anything else that you would like to share with the audience that we haven't covered yet?
No, I don't think so. Just thank you, everybody in the chat. Like I see so many familiar faces, and you know what? One little thing. So
Okay.
there was this author at NaNoCon where we met, Steve Gickadis, and his book is called humanism from the heart. And it's been really helpful in helping me navigate complex situations where we can offer people, compassion and kindness and humanism. So that would be like my one recommendation of a book that I enjoyed reading. No, not trying to endorse it or anything, just cool read.
Okay, very good. My guest next week is going to be Mark Aislip. He was one of the speakers at ARC Protest, and I got to meet him there, and he's going to come on and tell us about his channel and what he is doing to help the atheist community, and that is going to be another fantastic conversation. Thank you so much, AJ, for coming. It has been an absolute pleasure having you here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
And I so appreciate you filling in for Dr. Bundy at the last minute. Dr. Bundy is going to come. He's not going to be until September, but he is going to come. He's an evolutionary biologist, and he's going to tell us a little bit about debunking creationism from an evolutionary biologist standpoint.
He's great. Love his stuff.
Yeah, he is. He is. Thank you, everyone, and live your life.